Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie and I'm a publisher at Red Penguin Books, where we publish books of all types and genres. So whether you have a manuscript ready to be published, or a book still stuck in your head, or even 300 sheets of loose leaf shoved in a drawer, and yes, I get an envelope full of loose leaf, probably at least once a month. Visit us at redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. I'm so excited to be joined by three authors who have undoubtedly unleashed themselves today. And we have authors both from the States as well as Canada today. Wendy is the author of Lure, Jess and Hawk, which is a Lure River romance. Thorsten Nesch is the author of I Am, You Am I. Love that bright cover and the colors there. And our final author today, Stephen Schneider, is the author of Embracing the Magic, Town Magician Series Book 1. But first, we're going to meet Wendy, the author of Lure, Jessie and Hawk. And our author writes, Hawk is a wounded healer bent on losing himself in the Chippewa Reservation. Jessie's a vegan nature photographer trying to find herself on that same wild land. When Hawk shoots the deer Jessie's photographing, passions flare. Then Jessie hears that Hawk's friend is dying and sets off alone on horseback to warn him. He deserves the chance to say goodbye. She never had. But danger lurks everywhere near the small Midwestern town of Lure River. Jessie's just discovered the fragile bones of a missing Indigenous girl in her shed and drawn the unwanted attention of two local men. Can Jessie find Hawk before they find her? Little Bear's tragic tale weaves through the narrative, reminding us that one moment can change everything. Please welcome author W.L. Hawkin. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. And where are you hailing from today? Up north, right?
I am probably the furthest north here today. I'm in a beautiful town called Campbell River on Vancouver Island, on the east side of Vancouver Island. And I'm just a new arrival. I came here at the end of May with my family. Yeah, brought the whole family.
How much is the whole family and what brought you to Campbell River, Vancouver?
Well, good questions. The whole family is my daughter and her husband and my new grandbaby who's a year old. And I have wanted to move to Vancouver Island forever since I came here 25 years ago to BC because it's just gorgeous and a little bit quieter place than the mainland, which is where I ended up living and working for 25 years. But then when the grandbaby came on the scene last year, I said, okay, why don't we all go and we just start again? And so I was able to actually get a house here, which I could not do in the lower mainland. Anybody who knows what the prices are like in BC will understand that. So yeah, so we bought a house together and I'm really excited to be part of the family now. Yeah.
Wow, that's, it is beautiful, British Columbia. I was there for the expo, 1,000 years ago. And if the job of the expo was to make every single visitor want to move to British Columbia, they succeeded. Because if you were dreaming about it, I've been dreaming about it ever since too. It's beautiful. Absolutely. So tell us about the inspiration behind Lure, Jessie and Hawk, and the whole Lure River romance series.
Yeah, well, this is a kind of a strange story because I do write about this on my website, but I actually wrote the first draft of this book 30 years ago. And yeah, so it's been hanging around in a brown paper wrapper for 30 years. And when I wrote it then, I had just seen actually Romancing the Stone a few years before that and decided I wanted to be a romance novelist. I mean, didn't we all? After seeing Romancing the Stone. And but Romancing the Stone is something called romantic suspense. It's not just a romance. So if you watch it, there's a lot of danger involved in it and a big adventure as well. So I was leaving my ex-husband at the time. 30 years ago and starting my BA in Indigenous Studies. And so that's kind of where this book came from. And though Hawk is someone who has embraced the Indigenous culture in Minnesota, and he's grown up with it with his mentor, Joe. And he gets to a point where he's grieving over the loss of the woman who has his baby. And he's lost her and he's lost his child. And so he goes to live in a cave in the bush for 3 years. He's in this cave. And Jessie is kind of like, I guess she was me at the time. I'm really craving some adventure, and I was into photography, and I've always wanted to live in a cabin in the bush. So she's also grieving a loss, and she goes out to this cabin and they meet up in a kind of a pretty exciting meet cute scene that turns out pretty bad. But things turn around for them. So I had started rewriting this book. I pulled it out a couple of years ago after one of my moves. And I started reading it. And I'm like, this is pretty good. So I started rewriting it. And then as things happen with me, because I'm an intuitive writer, all of a sudden, Ruby Little Bear showed up. And what happened is Jessie found a hand coming up in her shed, like a skeletal hand. And so being that she's a wildlife photographer, I mean, she got really into it. She photographed it and everything. And then she went to the tribal police. So that story, Ruby actually came to me and told me her story. And so I ended up interjecting Ruby's story throughout the story of Jessie and Hawk. So it has a real component there of missing and murdered Indigenous women, which is something really close to my heart. Wow. That we need to look at, I think. So there's a whole serious piece to it as well.
Yeah, that's something I've seen in the news even recently about missing Indigenous women. I had
always
such a prevalent issue. I live in New York. We don't see that type of issue as much.
Right.
How fascinating that the book comes out of, and the book series, your studies of Indigenous people, you're being drawn to that. And this protagonist who kind of is you 30 years ago. I love the way you describe that. Now, this is part of a series, the Loire River series. How many in the series? How many are written? Are they connected by just Loire River, or do we not know yet because you're an intuitive writer and we'll just find out?
That's kind of my answer for that. I don't sit down and say I'm going to write this many books. I just write them when they come to me, but I usually spin off. So I have another series that are 4 books, my Hollystone Mysteries, and I just spin off. At the end, I say, what do we know? And then I wait for somebody to come along and go, hello, tell my story. And that's how I work.
I love the confidence in putting series name on book 1 when I think that is just wow. You're just knocking that out of the park as far as I know. I'll be told when I'm told,
Well, I've already done it once, so I have a 4-book series that will probably continue to happen as well. And so I know I can do it. I mean, it's
I have no doubt you can do it. But tell me a little bit about process. I'm always fascinated. And, they say 90% of the population wants to write a book. And I truly believe that, because every place I go, people either meet me and say, I wrote a book, I want to write a book, I'm in the middle of a book, I have a book in a drawer, and you really represent somebody who did that item, check off the bucket list. And with such assurance, that it's going to happen, that whatever the next books in the series, even this book, can you give us a little dive into process? Do you just sit back and wait for the muse to hit you? Are you, once it does, are you out researching? How do we answer those people who say, I want to write and I don't even know where to get an idea? How do you
Right. Well, I actually did a course, a workshop course a couple of years ago called From Spirit to Page, Writing with Your Muse. And I had people just like that come. And so what we did is we talked a lot about getting down into your theta brain, which is the inspirational kind of a brain, because most of the time we're walking around in alpha and beta brain, where we're like doing our taxes and trying to market our books and do all those kinds of really logical things. And you can't write like that. Sorry, guys, it doesn't work. That's how you get writer's block. So I think the more that you don't think, the more that you're going to find inspiration. So I use meditation, and I'll get myself into like that really meditative place. And then I see and hear things. So I'm pretty cinematic in my own brain, and I hear a lot of conversations, and I've worked as a medium a little bit too. So I've got that kind of skill, I guess it is, that you can work on. And then I sit down and I take what I've seen, like the first scene in Lure, I actually dreamed it 30 years ago. And it's basically, she's looking through her camera lens, and she's photographing this buck. And as she's looking through the lens, this arrow comes from behind her and shoots the buck, and the buck dies right on her camera film. And she's of course horrified, because she's a vegan wildlife photographer, and who shot the arrow? Well, we know that's a given already. And so that scene came to me fully fleshed out in a dream. And I got up the next morning and I basically type what I see. So I look at my job as the person who gets the right words and then turns it all into a text. So that's where my inspiration comes from.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And for people who are just waiting for that inspiration, the way you said, you can't force it. You have to wait until it happens, and that the writer's block comes when you're trying to, in a sense, put the cart before the horse and just go for it. Now, if you suddenly tonight, next week, had a yearning towards a story that was not part of the Lure River world, would you feel comfortable having 2 series, 3 series? Is that
Well, let me tell you. Yeah. So right now I'm finishing a book, a YA novel set at a lighthouse.
okay?
I used to work at a lighthouse for a year. I took a year off and I became a remote lighthouse keeper. And so I went to a couple of lighthouses. I really love this lighthouse. So I'm writing a book about a girl going back to a lighthouse she grew up on, searching for the truth about her mother's death. And so that is happening. And that one is in a revision stage right now. And then I have 4 other books in the Hollystone series that are still there that I will probably continue with. So the answer is no, I have no problem doing that. I actually the one that I'm writing now, which called Ghostlight as a working title, the Lighthouse book, I was writing it in 2018. And then my main character from the Hollystone Mysteries came along and tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, write this. And so I had been to Ireland and done a whole lot of research on an Irish bog body there. And so I ended up stopping Ghostlight to write To Kill a King, which is about an Irish bog body and some time travel and an archaeologist. And so I flip around all the time. Yeah.
Not a problem. Got that.
Yeah.
Wow. No writer's block here, folks.
No.
I know you don't believe in forcing a book, but is there something out there that you're hoping that the muse comes to? Is there a subject matter you're saying, gosh, when the time is right, I'd love to be writing about X, or you just letting it hit you?
Not really. I mean, I really just write, when you sit down to write a novel, you have to remember that this book is going to stay with you forever. You're probably going to read it 150 times. I'm sure people here can attest to that. And you're going to talk about it. And so you better be writing something that you really love. That's a passion-based book, or it's going to drive you mad. So I really look for that. But I'm an INFP, so I feel my way through life anyway.
Fantastic. Well, we certainly want our viewers to get involved in Lure, Jessie and Hawk by W.L. Hawkin, a Lure River romance. Maybe there's more at some point, but besides that, please visit bluehavenpress.com because there is plenty more for you to And I'm so grateful to get to meet you. Our next author, Thorsten Nesch, is the author of I Am, You Am I. And our author writes, she comes from a rich family in Vancouver and enjoys horseback riding. He lives on the wrong side of town and calls boxing his hobby. Two very different teenagers changing their bodies accidentally and have to live the life of the other. The funniest body switch comedy you will read. The author Thorsten Nesch lives in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. He's an award-winning and traditionally published author. His novels are read in schools throughout Europe. So I'm so excited to welcome author Thorsten Nesch. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Denise.
Absolutely. So happy to have you. And a body switch novel, huh?
Yeah.
Tell us the inspiration behind that. Did you wake up one day and discover you were not quite right?
I just finished another novel where a young woman cross dresses after a robbery to not get caught. And there were so many moments where I thought, there's so much potential that then after I finished that one, I was thinking, okay, what about the body switch, right? And then I was like, that is done like 1,000 times in Hollywood and novels. But I did the research. I watched all those movies, I read the novels, and then I thought, well, if that's really possible between 15-year-olds, this would hurt more, like this would. And then I got this idea. What then kicked it into writing was like, what if one doesn't want to switch back? So yeah, so that is then trouble, right?
No, I get that, and I like your statement. It might hurt, I think they never really get into that kind of a thing. Interesting that you mentioned that you read all the books and saw all the movies. I know many people who, when they're writing, whether it's a particular genre or style, they've done the opposite. They've deliberately closed themselves off from that. I know writers who, while we probably can all agree that the more you read, the better it will improve your craft, but I know people who will not read because they're so afraid of it tainting it. Were you worried that watching all these body switching movies and reading all the books was going to get into your book in a way that you weren't happy with or something, or that doesn't even faze you when you're writing?
No, for me, the nightmare would be if I would have found something where also somebody doesn't want to switch back, if it's too close. That was really the one that tipped it over, right? Like where I don't want to repeat anything just with 15-year-olds in Vancouver, although there's something done in New York or Ohio, right? So, and I love to do research in areas where I'm not, where I don't know. I'm very curious by nature. So, and before I start a novel, there are at least 2 years going by. So between 2 and 15 years or longer even, it takes me to actually sit down and write the novel. So this research and in my case, in 2 languages, right, in German and English, is always a given. Yeah.
Wow. I saw that you mentioned in your biography that your books are read in schools in Europe, in English or in German?
It's like so I Am, You Am I is traditionally published in Germany, and it is read between Denmark and Italy in many schools, actually. And another novel of mine in German, also originally published, is right now a mandatory read in high school. If you want to finish high school, you have to read in German language arts my book, and in English 1984. So yeah, that is.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I know. It's I still have to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just for the next 2 years. It just started with this.
That's exciting. That's really
great.
Exciting. And boy, what that does for book sales. Absolutely. I have to ask, how did you get involved with schools for reading? Was that just providential, or was that actually part of your author game plan, shall we say?
Yeah, it's funny. What was my game plan? My game plan started when I was 23, and I just decided that I would work to basically make money to buy myself time to write. And knowing that I probably will never make a living of it. So I expected nothing to happen. The main thing is I can read and write. And I was approached once by when I was young, like that was even before 23, I was 19. And in a secondhand bookstore, the lady, she asked me, "You're probably writing too." And I was like, "No, me writer? No." Yeah. And then she said, "You want to read some poetry, for my friends, just a little, And so I did a reading, and I really loved reading. I was super nervous. I was super duper nervous, but I loved the oral narration, the contact to the people. So I kept doing readings in cafes and bars, in occupied houses in Berlin, and so on. So by the time my first novel was published, and that happened to be a young adult fiction novel, a different one, which was nominated as Best German Debut, I was then invited by schools to read there. So it wasn't me going out. It was like it went over the publishing house. And then soon I had a reading agent. She had the contacts to the schools throughout Europe, and also on cruise. I did 2 cruises with my books and stuff, and did workshops there as well.
Book cruises. Okay, now every author is like, get me on a book cruise.
Yeah. I never thought how much fun that is. I love the water, right? I love Vancouver Island. I met my wife in Victoria, by the way, on Vancouver Island. So I went to Campbell River. Congratulations to your move, by the way, Randy.
Thank you.
And
now, you're living in Alberta now?
Yeah.
And how long have you lived there?
We moved here in 2014, although I say I was just 6 weeks here because I still had a position in Germany where I also taught at the university, young adult fiction writing. So I came a little later. I had a writer's residency in the Black Forest there. And so for me, it's basically 2015 I moved to Lethbridge, Alberta.
Okay, what prompted that move? When you had work going on?
Oh yeah, so my wife is actually from Calgary. That's here 2 hours north of Lethbridge, and so we were living in Germany at the time. We have lived in Victoria 4 years. Unforgettable. It is beautiful, as the people know that been there. And so after 10 years in Germany, my wife wanted to go back, and also the school system in Canada, if you raise your kids bilingual, we have 3 boys that we raised bilingually, the school system is better than in Germany for that. So it's still a very old school system in Germany with a 3-tier, and you get divided in after 4th grade. And so that was what basically then pushed me also and say like, yeah, I have other goals with my kids, for them. They should dream as long as they can.
Wow. So you write in English and in German, and now your children speak English and French.
In English, they speak English and German, although the youngest one, he dropped it after 6 months in Lethbridge. He just figured, I understand English, Mama speaks English, everybody here speaks English. So yeah. So, but the other 2 still understand me and converse with me in German as well.
That's very funny. I understand that. He'll be sorry. Sorry because as an American who speaks only English, and can, read, French and Spanish, but not speak it, I'm sorry that I gave it up. And your son will be sorry that he gave that up, that's for sure. So what's next?
I told.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I told him that, what they say is like, because he just spoke German until he was 6, right? He didn't switch to English for his mom in German because she understood him as well, right? So, but what I tell him, what they say is like, if you go back and then you learn it really fast because it's stored somewhere in the back of your brain. So, if you ever feel like.
Very cool. So are all of your books standalone books? Is that the way they come to you for the storylines? And tell me a little bit about that process for you. Are you like Wendy, that you might dream something, or are you a plot it out and figure it all out in advance first kind of a person?
Well, so far, basically they're standalone, to get back first to that question, but there are reoccurring characters in different times in their lives. There might be 15 in one book, could be 80 in another book. So
Mm.
that happens, for example, in different situations. The ideas, they come wherever they come. In this, I Am UMI was pretty much caused by another novel. Other things is I'm sitting on a train in Germany or whatever in Switzerland and travel, and I look out of the window, I see something and it stays with me, right? And I have this binder where I collect ideas, and sometimes ideas meld into one idea, and so that it's a long process. I definitely never sit down, okay, today I come with an idea. I think that's, as Wendy said, that doesn't work that way.
Right.
But I'm fortunate to have enough ideas, so many that I know I won't be able to finish all my ideas in my lifetime. So I always try to grab the one that, of course, means the most to me, and I don't have a series, so unfortunately, it's not that I wouldn't do it, I just, yeah, the next one is also again different from the one before. So
I get that. I get that. Now, have your children read your books?
actually yes, one, like there are three boys, and we did read every day when they were young to them, but the oldest one even translated a novel from German to English. He did that, and the youngest one is currently reading Joyride, what is it? Forest Spin in English, exactly. Like that was a book where that was nominated as best German debut, and I also sold the film rights to that one before it was published, actually. So yeah, so
Fantastic. Well, for all of our viewers, you definitely don't want to miss I Am UMI by Thorsten Nesch. And please visit thorstennesch.com. There are plenty of other books there. Maybe they'll even help you with your language skills, which I think is just fabulous. Our third author today, S.A. Schneider, is the author of Embracing the Magic, the Town Magician series, book 1. And our author writes, young Samuel longs to perform magic of his own. And what's worse, he can't seem to convince anyone that their beloved town magician is a trickster without an enchanted bone in his body. When a wicked wizard challenges the pretender to a duel, Samuel vows to keep his village safe by forcing the fraudster to rise to the challenge. Determined to prevent disaster, he secretly shadows the phony protector during his training with the Grand Wizard. And when they barely escape an attack by dire wolves, Samuel realizes he must partner up with the bitter rival. But keeping the truth hidden any longer may not help them outwit a powerful sorcerer. With his town in grave danger, can Samuel protect the loved ones he loves from the forces of evil? Please welcome author Stephen Schneider. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, how you doing, Stephanie? Hi, everybody.
Very good, thanks. How are you doing?
Good, good. And it's a good weather day down here. I'm the most southern one, which is extremely weird for me in Ohio.
I know, usually you lose that contest.
Yeah.
And how is the weather in Ohio today?
Today it's gorgeous. Maybe a little humid, but it's not super hot. So yeah, it's nice out there. It's going to be a really hot weekend, so I'm enjoying it today.
Fantastic. And typically, when I'm interviewing authors, they either have, something neutral behind them, maybe a book poster, and you've got Star Wars.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I have a green screen that I used to put up for authors, my author brand, trying to keep that consistent. But I pulled the hooks down accidentally and broke them, and I haven't gotten it back up. So this keeps working.
Well, Star Wars it is. Absolutely.
Yes.
Star Wars it is. Well, tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind Embracing the Magic. What started this storyline going?
It's actually my third book. The other two aren't published. The second one's going to be, but we have a local wizarding festival, Harry Potter inspired, here at Kent State every year. And the one year, like April, I said, oh, I could get a author table set up if I had a book about magic, which my other ones weren't. So let me just write a really quick short story with the goal just to be setting up a table, having a story to hand out to get people maybe to sign up for my list and get to see my face and all that. And as I wrote the story, it was short, but I started thinking, oh, well, it needs this, it needs this, it'd be better with this. And suddenly it started becoming a 20,000 word story that needed a little bit of tweaking and improvement. So I never did set the table up. And by the following year, I had already been working on book 2 and have plans for 7 whole books in the series. So the world grew on me, literally. And unfortunately, that's when COVID hit. So they haven't done the vendor table. So I haven't been able to get back to it yet. When I do, I should have a couple books instead of just one short story, which will be nice.
I love this. So all of this was for a vendor table that you haven't actually gotten because of COVID. And by the
Right.
time you do, you were writing a short story just for a vendor table. You're going to end up with a whole book series sitting on that table.
Right. Yeah, I have all 7 book ideas ready and planned, and I tried to make them very interwoven, which is there's things in the first book that are briefly mentioned in passing that aren't coming up till book 3 or 4. And so I'm hoping to keep things tied in well together that way. I hope.
Very cool. Very cool. Now you said this was actually the 3rd time you had written. Does it get easier? You know, this one seems to have flown. It was supposed to start as a short story, and here it is. Series.
I think Wendy and Thorsten will probably agree. Yes and no. The first book was really a disaster. Once my editor got a hold of it and I listened to all the comments and I'm like, yeah, this is a disaster. I'm going to move on. And second book had some good ideas. So this one I've rewritten several times to get it to the point where it was like, okay, now it's a story I can release. But I can see the parts of the book that aren't as strong now. I've had that practice. I've had the background, and that's really important. I know a lot of people get a lot too focused sometimes on where does the comma go, and is this a preposition at the end, and does it really matter? No, because nobody remembers that if the story is good. And that's where I feel I've gotten better is, oh, here's what can make a good story. But what sucks about it is when I'm reading somebody else's book or watching a movie, then I can't shut the brain off and I start analyzing it. And I'm like, this movie sucks. They totally missed this part and they should have done this. And, everybody watching with me is like, just shut up. Just let us enjoy the movie. We like, so there's the downside, the dark side of it.
Oh, absolutely. And do you feel that way when you read books as well? Or are you one of those people that has a hard time reading books because it taints your genre?
Most of the books I read aren't the same that I write, so
Okay.
that helps. But I have gotten a few, but I also like reading things that aren't similar to mine because I sometimes get more out of that. Same as reading a bad book gives me more information sometimes than reading good books. I can more easily pick out, well, if I was doing this, I wouldn't do that. And it's like lessons for myself. So that does help.
I love that. Now, you have the other 7 books kind of mapped out, sketched out. Are we working on them? What's going on with you in writing right now?
Yes, I had book 2 done as I was finishing up book. I went back and kind of rewrote some stuff in book 1 and made it more palatable. And then I realized, wow, book 2 is a little bit of a plodding, boring story, and let it sit for a while. And one day while mowing the lawn, I rewrote the book in my head. So I'm now going to fix those things to make it better. More excitement, and not necessarily big action stuff, but not just let's walk to this town and sit at this table and talk. Let's walk to this town. That's what it seemed like. So I got rid of that.
Good for you. And that stuff you can only get rid of after time. I love that you said that.
Yes.
You are growing and evolving as a writer,
Right.
For all 3 of you, so many people want to write. And the things I find that is holding them back is they would say writer's block, or I don't have any ideas, or I stink, or sometimes we see the opposite. They think that first book has got to be a Pulitzer Prize winning book, and really they should write some more books in the meantime. But I find that just as many people watch who want to write as want to read. So if you were coaching, and I know one of you does workshops for writers and such like that, what do you think the biggest problem that people encounter is when they're writing? And what do you think would be like if you were in their shoes when you were a younger, newer writer? What would have helped you to hear it? Wendy, is there some word of advice that if you could tell, 20-year-old self or whatever it might be, hey, this is what you need to know later on? What would that advice be?
I think that inner critic is a big one there. That person who says you're not good enough, you're not a writer, you can't do this, that kind of thing. And so I would really tell people that you have to, first of all, just write it, write what your passion is, write what you love, and get into it. Like I wrote books that I wanted to read because I couldn't find anything I wanted to read. That's really what got me going. And also because I was stressed out. So write for a reason so you're into it. And then after you get the whole thing written, then really reach out and find your community so that you've got other eyes on your work. But don't get other eyes on your work until you actually get the whole story out. Because I think I think people tend to like write something and then immediately say, here, can you look at this? Can you look at this? And I certainly did that a lot to my poor daughter, who in the last book said, Mom, I do not want to read this until it's completely finished. Shut up about it and stop talking. And so I went, okay. And she said, I think this is your best book. And I said, that's probably because you just didn't know what it was about till you read it. So it really just, you have to do it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense what you said, that people are so anxious when they find that community, which is so exciting, to bring them something too soon. And good on your daughter to recognize that you need to stop showing her stuff and go back and write the darn thing. And awesome. I love that piece of advice. Thorsten, how about you? What would you like to tell, I don't know, 15-year-old, 20-year-old self? You started young. So,
yes, I started young. I started writing when I stopped playing. I went to school once and then, so what did you do yesterday? And I was like, yeah, with Playmobil. I was like, and the guys were like, really? And so that was kind of like, and basically the next week I started writing my fantasy down, So for me, it was really, I just did it because I had to. There was no choice. But yeah, I gave a lot of workshops as well. And especially when you start out, how do I start out? I always say, like, don't tell yourself I write a novel in 6 weeks or something. Usually you have other things to do. You have friends, family, job. Keep it to half an hour a day, especially when you start out. And then maybe after a year, go back to the first week or 2 weeks and see if you're still happy with it, or if it improved, or why, what is missing, and then try to find that. So I literally I was a teenager when I took novels, for example, by Stephen King, where I was like, why do I like his page? Why do I like his writing? And I without knowing any secondary literature, nothing, right? We didn't have creative writing in high school and all that. I just figured it has to do with a grammar, it has to do with sentence structure, with rhythm. And that was, I literally took it apart. Like, I cut it apart to see how long sentences are. I marked, but, and, the connectors and all these things. And then I checked my own page and I was like, yeah, it's just, 8 words, 10 words, 7 words, and, and then hands on or brain on and work on yourself. Like, I was autodidact, right?
I love that. And just work on yourself.
Yeah.
It's so simple, which is that's the hope, is that it's so simple. Stephen, what do you want to tell your younger self about writing, or at least the Stephen who wrote that first book?
The same thing, actually. I mean, I wouldn't have gotten this book without writing that first book and messing it up and going through it. Too many writers get so focused on getting that first book, the first chapter, the first page, making everything absolutely perfect. Whereas those that write 5 books in the same amount of time get much further ahead and are much better writers. And the interesting thing is, one of my goals being a middle grade writer isn't just to write middle grade books. I want to work with kids to help them understand they can choose writing as part of their life and use it as maybe not a full-time career, but something on the side that, you know, instead of having to have that job they hate, they could have a job they love, even if it's not as much, and supplement it with writing and have a great life. And, you know, showing kids, one of their focuses is showing kids doing stories for video games. It kind of meshes some of their likes. So a lot of my focus is on helping younger kids and their parents to understand, hey, your kids can do this right now. They don't have to wait till they're 18 and go to college. They can do it at age 12. So that's hopefully me telling those younger selves that you can do this.
Absolutely. And if they're doing it 12, what better books too, to be closer.
Yes.
And they were kids, you know, we as we get older, especially when we leave our childhood, we really lose a lot in that motion. So
absolutely,
to write younger. Thorsten was writing when he was, you know, practically in the womb, which is fabulous. So closer to that, still playing the game kind of thing, which is just so great. Thorsten, tell me something. If I were shopping today and I'm thinking about who I want to buy a copy of I Am, You Am I, who on my shopping list should I be buying this for? Can you describe my ideal person on my shopping list?
Definitely. So I know that my books are read by adults as well, because the parents see their kids laughing their heads off, right? So with I Am, You Am I, it's the perspective matters, because it's two first person perspectives. So so it's always through the eyes of the other one, even after the switch. It definitely, like, from the feedback I got, like, or I read it in front of, I don't know, probably 1,000 or 2,000 kids in total. It is like, even the ones that want to stay cool, they read it. And the teachers always tell me they can read my books with the kids, because they know the kids actually read the book. So I think it can be for an avid reader that wants to just have, like, you know, at this point, some fun. It's also critical in a way, and also a commentary on our lives, as well as gender identity. But yeah, if you want to have a laugh, that's what you should read.
Love that. Love that. And thank you so much for hitting some of your main themes in there that people who are interested in various things might be especially drawn to this book. Great for people who are shopping to know. Absolutely. Stephen, how about you? If I'm trying to find your ideal reader or my ideal gift giver, because I have some presents to buy, who should I be buying a copy of Embracing the Magic for today?
Well, obviously you're going towards the middle grade kid, the early teen, but more specifically, I was hoping to get a book that boys would enjoy and trying to entice more boys to read. There you go, Thorsten. I'll send one to you. And also in the back of the book, I've got discussion questions and words to know and writing ideas. So I try and put a little in there. So like homeschool teachers or parents and teachers at school, this would be a book that they could use with their class. And again, with the goal of inspiring them to read. You know, I know how many people wrote fan fiction because of Harry Potter and their love of Harry Potter. So that's, you know, part of what I'd like to do is teachers, parents, grandparents, get it for the kids and sit with them and, you know, come up with stories of your own.
That's fantastic. And I'm so excited that you included resources for homeschooling families in there. That's just great. Also, just because I forgot to mention for our viewers to visit sa-schneider.com for this book and for other books. And if you're looking for those resources, it's really a great way to know, what should I be asking about this book? What are some of the, you know, this way the parent or teacher can do the deeper dive.
Right. And it is SCH, Thorsten, it's the German, you know, we don't go for the Americanization of it.
That's Schneider, S-A-Schneider.com. Schneider.com. Absolutely. Lots of C's in there. Thank you. Wendy, how about you? Who would you say is our ideal reader? Who should I be buying a copy of Lure, Jessie, and Hawk for today?
Well, although it says it's a Loire River romance, which is part of the series, it's also available to everyone because there's a lot of adventure, there's romance, there's suspense in there, there's some bad guys. It's not just a woman's book is what I'm getting at, and a lot of nature. So I think it's a good one for everyone. And then I had a young woman, an Indigenous woman, read it, and I asked her, you know, she's 18. I said, do you think it's suitable for teens? And she said, oh yeah, absolutely. The way you've written it, it's a great teen novel as well. So I think, you know, it's not like things that you don't want your kids to read.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha. No, I'm
You
so
see
glad.
what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think it's available to everyone who wants to indulge in a romance that's
so
out in
glad you
nature.
said that. Yes. No bad words, sex, things like that. You know, it's so important for all of us to be able to say who our book is for, what's in there and what's not in there, just clearly. And the three of you are just fabulous at that. What is next on the hit parade? What hopefully you'll join us back here between the covers. Stephen, what are we going to be talking about next time? What book is coming out next?
Oh man, I actually have multiple. I've got several partially done. So it's probably going to be like a flood every couple months. I'm going to get a book out as I start finishing them. I have they're all towards the middle grade. It's a kind of like a cozy spy mystery for kids that'll be coming out. And then I've got a Scooby-Doo like investigative series. And I actually have that started up on Kindle with the young version of the kids, but I've got 3 stories already written because I used to write them for my kids and give them to them at Christmas. So I'm turning those into a series I'm releasing. So over the next year, I'll probably, as long as I keep my butt in the chair, I'll probably have several books come out.
Fantastic. Butt in the chair it is. Wendy, how about you? What's going to be the next thing out?
Well, I'm looking for a home for Ghostlight right now. That's my YA, my YA novel set at the Lighthouse. And and we'll see where that goes and who taps me on the shoulder next.
Fantastic. And Thorsten, how about you?
I'm just about to finish this month in July a novel that I started last year. I got a literary arts grant from the Alberta Foundation for the Arts for a year-long writing. What is going to be finished in July. It's a dystopian novel that I then afterwards hopefully can successfully pitch for publishing houses, called Suicide Hotel.
Oh my gosh. Well, we have a busy crowd here. Thank you so much for joining us between the covers, and for all of our viewers, please take a look at these 3 books. You will be very excited by them, and obviously there's plenty more to come. So get started now so you can follow these authors. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank
you for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're an author who would be interested in appearing on our show, or perhaps you're a member of a book club, we do host book clubs as well, please visit betweenthecoverstv.com. By the way, at betweenthecoverstv.com, you can watch past episodes in addition to learning more about our authors and guests. So sign up there if you would like to be a guest on the show yourself. And if you have some books that you would like to get written or published, visit redpenguinbooks.com. Thanks so much for joining us.